Brown skin, lover, brown skin, lover, brown. I'm hype, yo. Welcome to the Minority Trailblazer podcast, and I'm your host, Greg Eel, the culture change agent. You already know on this show we interview young, successful minorities in a variety of fields to educate, to empower, and inspire our current and future generations of leaders. Man, it's crazy. I was on the road and somebody thought that I was the rapper behind the brown skinned lover. I'm like, yo, I don't rap. But actually, it's my line brother, Laka Shaw, man. He's out in LA right now. Crazy album, crazy energy, man. Make sure you go cop it on iTunes. And before I go, you already know I got a couple housekeeping things. First, let's send out a prayer. If you're not a praying person, send out a thought, a concern, something to Houston. Man, I know they're going through a lot right now, and I was just up there a month ago recording a live podcast, and so many people are affected. So I send my personal prayers out to all those in Houston that are affected by the hurricane. So please stay safe, stay vigilant, stay positive, and America got you. America got you, all right? Second, I am excited to announce we got merchandise now. You can get the Minority Trailblazer hoodies, black, white, gray, navy, t-shirts, black, white, gray, navy, v-necks for the ladies, black, white, gray, navy, online at minoritytrailblazer.com. Also, you can now register early bird, still in effect. I haven't really began promotion, so you need to go ahead and copy your tickets to the Minority Trailblazer conference, and all information is at mtbconf.com. It's going to be in the show notes. It's going to be a phenomenal conference. You do have the option to put deposit down. So if you can afford the early bird, you can go ahead and lock your rate now. All right. And then last but certainly not least, I'm excited to announce a new program, and I'm only taking 16. Yep, I said 16 individuals that are interested in growing or starting his career in speaking, podcasting, or writing books. I have a program. It's going to be $50 a month, only taking 2 classes of 8 people a piece. We're going to be meeting every other Saturday. I'm bringing on special guests. It's going to be exciting, and you can find out more information on that at gregehill.com/Thrive Group. That will be in the show notes. So I'm excited about that. So I'm looking forward to growing and building. So while I'm climbing, bringing other people up there. So if you are interested in podcasting, writing a book, speaking, and you just need to know where to start or how to level up, yo, holla at me, all right? And before we enter this podcast, our guest on the show has a partnership with Spotify for a conference, a game-changing conference, right? For students of color that attend an HBCU, sophomore through seniors, to have a free, yes, I said it, free 3-day conference to see what careers are in tech, learn from the industry leaders, and see what diversity and inclusivity is all about. And it's partnered with 2020 Shift and Spotify. It's a great opportunity. So I'm glad and thankful for wAriel for even partnering with Spotify and making that happen. So for more information, you can go to 2020shift.com and look for the opening act, or you can look at the show notes. And yeah, so make sure you share with any person that you know that attends at a historically black college or university that may be interested in tech. Even if you're not interested in tech, it's a 3-day free conference. They're going to put you up in a hotel, learn from industry leaders, probably get some cool swag bags. So make sure you apply, all right? And I got to get one more thing before I enter this show. Make sure you leave a review and subscribe. We have 250,000 downloads. We only got 173 reviews. Go ahead and leave that 5-star review, all right? And if you're new to this podcast, or if you are listening to this podcast, this episode right now, I'm so excited because the young lady we have online, man, she's doing some powerful things in the tech space, being a woman of African American and Latino descent. And she is the bomb. Has partnered with some of the top brands in the country. Only been in this thing a couple years, and she just has a heart of gold, a lot of wisdom, a lot of sarcasm, a lot of wit, and I'm just glad to have her on the podcast because some would say she ain't supposed to be here. She was a college dropout. She didn't have no 4-year degree. She didn't have a sponsored parent. She didn't have people advocating for her or an incubator that launched her to the next thing. She just great. hustle, and belief. Grit, hustle, and belief. That's the foundation of this podcast. That's the foundation of my speaking career. That's the foundation of life. Anybody that has a dream right now, that's listening to this show right now, hustle, grit, and belief will get you to where you need to go. And I'm excited to bring her on because that's just half the battle. There's so much more strategy involved, so much more intentionality involved, and she's going to bring them jewels to the show. Let's get it started. Episode 2 of season 4, and episode 1 was phenomenal. Darren Lee, shout out to my LinkedIn fan, my Facebook fan that shared the episode, that have been moved, have been touched. It's been crazy, and I know this episode right here is going to be another banger. I'm be on fire season 4, and I'm excited because this guest that we have on the show, she's a fast talker like me, so we're going to get along. 2, she is on the verge of launching some phenomenal stuff, and I can't wait for her to get on the show and talk about. Number 3, I've had her on my Know the Trailblazer live tour when we was in New York, and man, the gems that she dropped, the people she connected me with, and just her authenticity was just like groundbreaking. I know this is going to be an episode for you, so I'm gonna read a snippet of the bio, and then we're going to jump right into it. And for my listeners that have been listening to an hour 30, 2-hour podcast for the last season, we're going to do our best to get this thing out between 45 minutes to an hour. So keep me your praise on this thing. All right. So she is a career coach, entrepreneur, and public speaker with the expertise in digital media and technology. She's the CEO of 2020 Shift, an educational startup that connects people to opportunities in tech through training and events. Currently, 2020 Shift helps companies like Spotify, Uber, Oscar Insurance, Yelp, and more attract and retain diverse talent. The company is also part of the National Tech Hire Initiative, which aims to get over 100,000 people employed in high-paying tech jobs by 2020. And with over 6 years of recruiting experience, she's worked with top brands and startups to help them with their recruiting efforts. She's helped thousands of marketing, advertising, and tech professionals grow in their careers and find lucrative opportunities. She's spoken at several conferences and events, including Tech Inclusion, Greenhouse Open, Hispanicize, Black Tech Week, Social Media Week, and others. And she's also a member of Forbes Coaches Council, an invite organization developed by Forbes and YEC to provide thorough thought leadership opportunities to top business and career coaches around the world. I know that was a mouthful, and she's not even 30 yet, and I'm just excited to have her on the show. So before I introduce, I want to get the show ready, the world ready, the culture ready for wAriel Lopez. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. That was, oh man, such an introduction. I feel so honored and just happy right now. Can you come on the road and do that for me?
I think that's what I need to incorporate into my offerings, into my services and whatnot. But like you said, it was a mouthful, but it's all real. And I know this is only like a tip of the iceberg. So that's why I'm excited, because doing our experience in New York, and I haven't released that audio in that video yet, but man, just your stories, your pinpoint accuracy with your advice and your strategies and what you do, and your honesty, man, it really spoke volumes to me. And I know the audience will get a lot today. So as we kick this thing off, Sister Lopez, please start us off with a quote. It don't have to be a quote. It could be a quote, or it could be just a mantra that you live by and you apply to your everyday life, and share us a story that goes along with that.
Oh man. Oh God. Don't put me on the spot like that. I have so many mantras that I live by. To think of one in particular, I think there's a few done is better than perfect. Mm-hmm. Learned that the hard way. It's not where you are, it's where you want to be. That came from my mama, and that's been my mantra for life.
Yeah.
Hustle. It's one word, but it means so much to me.
So if you had, so let's jump into that hustle word, because I love the start of this. When you say hustle and you think about your last week, right? Give us a story about how that word and just got into your pores, and how you operate on that on an everyday basis.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think hustle is just persistence. Hustle is, it's just that inner emotions where, I'm not going to give up. like regardless of what's happening, regardless of self-doubt, rejection, people that tell me no, things not going the right way, whatever. It's just I am so focused on getting to where I want to be and accomplishing what I want to do that I'm not going to let anything get in my way. And when you think about hustle or just hustlers in general, right? So if we take it to the streets, like hustlers are problem solvers. Hustlers are people that always get it back, right? These are people that they have been like in and out of jail, like ran off on the plug twice, whatever. But a true hustler never stays down for long. And I think working in tech, especially as an entrepreneur, you know, the startup grind is hard. It's grueling. It takes a lot of energy, and you know, there's a lot of times where I feel really tested, and it tests my patience, my faith, so many things. And I feel like because of, you know, my hustle and what it means to me, it's the only thing that's been able to take me this far, and you know, it's helped me to persevere. So for me, hustle is ultimately just that. Like, you have to keep going, regardless of, you know, what you may tell yourself or what other people may tell you along the way. If we're talking about this week, you know, before we even started the podcast, I was telling you that we got into this program. So Google has an exchange program actually in Durham, which is amazing, with American Underground. And it's for Black founders. And it's really competitive. Last year we applied and we didn't get in. And I was pissed off. I actually felt personally violated because I'm from North Carolina, you know, and I remember like writing out the application. I was telling my co-founder, I was like, yo, we got this. Like, they would be crazy not to pick us. Like, how could they not? Because, you know, I'm from there. The business is making moves. Like, it only makes sense. And we didn't get in. And, you know, I was frustrated. So fast forward to 2017, we actually start working with Google. So we've partnered with them on 2 different things this year, and we have some stuff in the works for the rest of the year. And you know, going into 2018. And then we did our HBCU Black Business Expo tour, and we were in Durham back in April. And we actually had a couple of people from American Underground out on the tour, 1 or 2 that were actually panelists during the event. So fast forward to applications this go round, I'm like, yo, if they don't pick us and we're actually working with Google, and then on top of that, like, we know people at American Underground, like, I had an advisor that, you know, knows one of the partners, and, you know, I was just trying to work it from all angles. And, you know, we were able to get in, and we're one of 10 companies, but they had, I don't even know how many applications. So, you know, it's, you know, just persisting to be able to do that was huge for me. Like, being able to go from rejection and not letting it stop you. Because I remember when the email came to my inbox, I was like, you know what? We shouldn't even apply for this. Like, because if we do apply and we don't get it again, then I'm gonna have to come to personally and just, you know, show up on somebody. But, you know, luckily, you know, they were able to see the value in, you know, what we're building. And I'm just really passionate and really excited about some of the stuff that we have coming down the pipeline. So all that to say, you know, hustle. Like, a year can change so much. And I know it gets really hard for people to think about that, because when you're living things and you're struggling and, you know, you're going through whatever, it's like you still have that vision, but all you see is your reality. So it doesn't really make sense to you. At the time, it was just like, well, we got rejected or whatever. But that hustle, that perseverance is, you know, what's going to take you from win to win, and through your losses as well. You just got to be, you know, comfortable and kind of, you know, milly rock through it.
Yeah, nah, I love that. And I want to stay right there. And we're going to get to your intro and talk 2020 shift. But there's two things that jumped out to me that I want to address right here and right now within that story. Side note, I love the fact that once the first year you got denied, you was like, first of all, like, what in the world? Because I know everybody, when I get denied for something, I look like, who did they select then? I'm refreshing the site. I'm like, looking at those 10 companies. I'm looking at their website. I'm like, yo, look at the data. There's no way. But, a lot of these things are, yeah. So I'm glad that you were able to fight through and get that. And it's crazy for me personally, because last week, there was this opportunity. One of my boys had pitched to me like this huge, opportunity, like to speak in front of like 2,000 college kids and introduce like the CEOs, and they needed an MC, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, shoot, ain't no better guy than me. Like, what you mean? I have experience with this. And I got on I interviewed one of the guys that was trying to find the MC for it. And I thought I killed it. I mean, I had all the pictures from my last tour. I had the gigs that I had major cosigns. I was like, this is a no-brainer. I had the energy rocking, had the stories for days. I think the only thing I messed up on when we had the interview, I usually dress in suits when I do speeches. I mean, I just like suits, especially when I go to like urban audiences. I like them to see like a black man in a suit. But I was hoodied out because I mean, when I'm not speaking on the stage, when I'm at home or in the lab mode, I'm not trying to impress nobody. I don't need to go to a Starbucks with like a blazer. I was on that 2 years ago. I used to go to Starbucks with like blazers and looking like the meanest guy in Starbucks when I'm making no money. So I was like, nah, I'm not on that no more. I had a hoodie and I just don't think they can see it. So I didn't get in. At first I was like, but my mindset has changed so much from a couple years ago when I got denied. I immediately got like, I felt personally attacked, like what in the world? And I found out who they got doing, and he actually fit the mold. And it's crazy that date ended up getting booked for something that kind of fit me a little bit more. Cause the other one, it was going to be cool, but I was going to be stretched. But I say that to say, you talked about hustle. And when we first started this podcast, I mentioned the Ubers, the Spotifys, all these people of the world. And I want this podcast to talk about, because I think there's different types of hustle, because there's a lot of people that's listening to this podcast that they are doing some phenomenal work in the community, or adding value to clients and customers, or they have a great vision and they already have some stuff that to back them up. However, they haven't really had partnerships or incubators, the things of that nature that could really take them to the next level. But they would arguably say, yo, I'm hustling just as hard. I mean, so how can, I want you to just kind of get on your footstool real quick and, and then share, like, how are you able to think strategic and really partner? Because, and actually this can go right into your backstory too. So, 2 for 1, because you don't have a typical upbringing. It's not like you have like Ivy League pedigree or some big machine hyping you. Like, so how, not at all. where did you get the confidence to develop those type of partnerships? And, I guess that's where we start.
I love questions like this because it really just forces you to think back. And I think for me, my upbringing, I come from very humble beginnings. My mom worked 2 jobs my whole life. She actually just stopped working her second job recently. Single parent home, poverty level. Like, I was definitely a free lunch kid for super long. I didn't get my first car until I was in college, and I actually paid for it cash myself. There was a lot of times to where I definitely felt like, man, it would be great if I came from a home that had 2 parents. It would be great if, my mom had extra money to spend on this or whatever. And I think that just always drove me to go a little bit harder. So, when it comes down to my ambition and my drive, it comes from knowing what it's like to not have and not wanting to ever be in that position again. And I promised myself at a young age, I was like, all right, I see, like, this is how it is right now, but it's not always going to be like this. And I really think I have what it takes to just make a lot of money doing whatever I want to do. Obviously put my mom in a better position, take care of my family, and, take care of my community. I've always been purpose driven. If I think back to, my first business idea, I was in high school. I wanted to open up a teen center because, I have family in New York. I mean, I had always kind of been back and forth to New York. And, in New York, there's, just a lot of things to do. And where I was at in Greenville, North Carolina, wasn't a ton to do. And I was like, what if we opened up like a teen center, and it would be a way to get high school students jobs? And I had like this whole business plan. I was rocking with it. But I was also like always very outgoing. Anytime I could be president of like SGA, I was. There was like a city council that they made. Like a teen council that they made coming from the city council when I was in high school. I ran that. When I got to college, I was freshman class president. Like I was always used to kind of being in a position of leadership, but whatever I did, it was always purpose driven with an idea of how am I using my influence for good, right? Like I always kind of secretly despised, people that were able to attain wealth, but never thought about how that trickles back down. Like it's cool to like get the house and the car and buy Balmain pants and do whatever it is that you want to do, but it's just like, what about everyone else? And I think I always took that with me when it came up to coming up with ideas for business or whatever, and really just letting that drive me. Because I feel like that makes me more confident, right? Because I'm not just doing this for myself. There's a certain kind of pressure that's applied when you have people relying on you. For the first 5-6 years of my life in New York, it was, I've been kind of hustling solo. But as of last year, we're building out a team. I got to make sure people get paid.
Yeah.
Like people got bills, people got to eat. And, when I wake up in the morning, I think about that. It's not just what does wAriel want to do today? It's like, all right, how do I make sure everybody around me is good? And then once the team is straight, how do I make sure we're bringing up other people into that?
Yeah.
So that's just kind of like part of my psyche. And I think it's really important because people have different motivations and different drivers. And, some people are just in it for the money, and that's great. Tech is definitely the right industry to be in if you want to do that. But I think for me, it's never been about the money. It's always been about the purpose behind it. And I think when those things align, it's just, it's a beautiful thing. But in terms of like partnerships and stuff, I mean, honestly, I just hustled my ass off. Like there's really no other way to put it. Because when I came to New York, like you said, I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I went to East Carolina University. Shout out to my Pirates for life. But I dropped out of ECU, like the end of my junior year, moved to New York on a whim. And I was just like, all right, I'm gonna hustle and figure it out. I just so happened to, fall into recruiting, and I was good at it because part of recruiting is just basically sales. So I always knew that I can talk to people. I know how to talk to people, and I think I give good advice. And from recruiting, that turned into career coaching. And, I was just looking at all scopes of it, from like, how do companies hire? How do they find the right people? And then also for job seekers and, my friends, what are their challenges? Like, how do you help someone get from point A to point B in their career? And that's been my life, right? So a meshing of those two worlds makes it to where I can step into a Google or an Oscar or a Spotify or whatever and say, hey, I know what the fuck I'm talking about because I'm doing it. It's not like I just stumbled upon this thing and was like, okay, this seems like a neat thing to do. Like I've spent my entire career thinking about these things and talking to people and trying to help people. So I feel like master your craft, right? Like the only way you get confident is when you know what you're doing. And I think the important thing to note there is you can't get frustrated when you're not, where you want to be in 6 months or a year. Like things take time. Like we just talked about something I was rejected for a year ago that now it's the time for us. Like you don't really know what God has planned for you. And I think there's a certain level of like, you have to detach from that time, that personal timeline of goals. Not meaning you don't go after what you want, because you do and you still go hard for it. But more so just being open and being accepting to the process. You have to accept the process, and know that things will come in time when it's right for you.
I love that. I love that. And on that note, can you talk us through your first of all, your feeling when you got that email, or it was a call with your first major partnership? And if you can give, we don't need like, okay, you email this person. What was some tangible things that everybody should do, or that they should be aware of while pitching and then actually structuring a partnership? Because we could say, hey, Ariel, I want to partner with 2020 Shift today. But a lot of people really don't know even how to partner. So first, take us back to that joyous moment when you got that first call, like, yo, we'll be delighted to partner, and boom. And then going forward after that, because I like a couple questions. The whole, what is if you had to give your 3 nuggets to partnerships, what would they be?
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So, man, I mean, I feel like I've had different moments of like the wow.
Give me your best one. Give me the one you think the audience would get the most from.
I think the best one.
I know that's hard though.
It is kind of hard because there's different situations. I'll use the one when I was still working a full-time job, because I have so many people that come up to me and they're like, I'm thinking of taking the leap, but how do I know when it's the right time?
Yep.
Or how do I, finesse my side hustle and turn it into my full-time, whatever. So one of the events that we do right now, it's called Office Hack, and it's a tech crawl. We've been doing it for the last 2 years. This is our 3rd year, and we're actually taking it on the road to the Bay at the end of October. But our first time doing it, I think the sponsorships, I think it was like maybe $500. Like, it was pennies. Like, it was so cheap.
Wow, honey, you can't even get the cups for that.
Also, I know, but at the time I was still working. I was working full time at General Assembly. And we were just kind of experimenting and figuring out like what worked for us. And I came up with the idea of like, what if we did like a massive kind of like tech crawl of sorts, because I've been to different bar crawls and they're always fun. So I was like, what if we just exchanged the bars with tech companies and have people go inside offices and visit and meet people. And the first year that we did it, I think we made probably was no more than maybe $5,000. Last year we made probably around 50 grand. So that's 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, I need people to understand like how things happen in a short period of time, right? Like, if you're able to just grow things, year over year, month over month, whatever, like, as you get more comfortable with your craft and as you start to produce more and more, naturally that price tag is going to increase, right? So something that didn't make a lot of money at first is now something that will probably make us 6 figures next year. And this is just an event. And that's not even the core part of our business model, right? Like, this is just something that was cool for us to do. But I think the big part of that is it was my first time realizing like, okay, people will pay.
Yeah.
Right.
Ooh.
It didn't matter how much. I just needed that validation. So as soon as I got that, I was like, okay, cool. And I think it's what I needed to take myself more seriously, because, GA, pros and cons, but it was stable, right? Like, it was my first time living in New York, 24, 25, making close to 6 figures as a college dropout. Like, most people would not step away from that situation.
Yeah, they're like, yo, there's a lot hanging on that thing.
Like, all right, we made it, we got the bag, like, let's just chill for a second. But I always saw it wasn't about that comfort. Granted, like, I had that stability, but I got the validation that I needed, that, hey, companies will actually pay us to do this kind of stuff. Like, let me spend more time figuring out what we're going to do with the business. And, from that, it led me to leaving GA within the next 6 months. And, I've been doing it. I've been doing 2020 full time now for over a year and a half. So things move and escalate very, very quickly. But, just early validation definitely helps. But, I think in terms of like partners and I guess my 3 gems to closing people and making it make sense. The first thing is just ask questions. So I think a lot of people just have good ideas in their head and they're like, I love this, so someone else is going to love it too. But that's not necessarily true, right? Like I can pitch you on, I don't know, I can pitch you, let's say like I'm trying to sell you some Yeezys for like $1,000. Like seem like a pretty fashionable guy. I'd be like, you know what? He's definitely going to buy these. Meanwhile, you may have just bought a pair of Yeezys yesterday, or your cousin may have gifted it to you for your birthday.
Yeah, or I've never, like, I might look like it, but I've never bought any Jordan. I've never spent over $100 on any sneaker.
And or you may not even like Yeezys, right? But like, look at those 3 scenarios right there that show me you're not the right person for what I'm trying to sell. If more people took time really investigating and asking good questions to figure out, hey, is what I'm providing actually valuable to you, then I think there will be better partnerships. Most of the time people just kind of have a pitch and they overpromise and then they underdeliver, but they were never really clear on expectations in the first place, i.e. what's in it for me, but also what's in it for you. Like if you're not clear on the what's in it for you or what's in it for them, for your client or your partner or whoever, like it's just not going to end up well for you. So I think that's something to definitely take note of. I would say make it easy for people to digest the information you're trying to give to them. So definitely have some kind of deck. At this point, I have more decks than I would like, but because there's different decks for different things.
Yeah, gotta have them different angles, just like boxing. You can't just do a jab. You got a left jab, right jab, tech company, sports company. If your point of contact is a male, your point of contact is a female. If she's African American, if she's not, but it's like there's so many different variations you could probably make, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's a ton. But I think at the bare minimum, you just need to have kind of like your tried and true basic partnership deck. So that says who you are, what you are, how you solve a problem, or why people should use you. Definitely some, I want to hear like some success stories or a testimonial. Those go a really long way. A lot of our partners know each other. Or, it feels better to say, yes, I'm going to do this thing because so-and-so is doing this thing. And I think that's why we've been able to work with so many dope companies, because we already have other dope companies there. It's not like we work with no one and you're going to be the first. You know what I mean? And granted, it takes time to get there, right? It's not like we've always had all of these clients. But I would say even in the beginning, you have to find a way to strategically leverage everything that you've been working on up to that point via partners, via your services or whatever, to kind of paint that picture and paint that story like, hey, you can trust me to do this for you because I've done it before. I've done it for other people and, this is their feedback. So I would say that's the second thing. And then the third thing is just ask for the money. Oh my God. That's so much time. And, get frustrated with themselves because they never asked or they never found an opportune time in the call to say, hey, so what's your budget for this? What I will say is there are certain things that make sense that you should do that won't have monetary compensation, right? So to this day, like I do events, I speak at stuff to where I don't get paid to speak, but it's because I really value the audience that's going to be there, or I'm going to get access to the list of all of the emails, which turns into money for me over time anyway, right? Like you have to think about ROI for you and what makes sense for you. Obviously, money is always great, but there are going to be certain situations to where it's like, you know what, we should partner on this and we should do this because it makes sense for the brand and makes sense for where we're trying to go. But for people that are just uncomfortable, asking for it, you just have to ask for it. I think one of the best pieces of advice I've heard in the last 3 months was imagine yourself as a privileged white guy. How would you move differently? And I literally sat there for a second. I was like, you know what?
Wow.
So much differently, right? Because
I'd be like Conor McGregor. I'd be just everywhere. Like, what? You ain't gonna give me $100,000 for this conference right here? Are you serious? Like, yeah, no, I feel you. I love that. That's a quotable right there.
No, it definitely is. But it's just like, that's how you need to move because they aren't caught up with their hangups. Right. They aren't thinking about what can go wrong. They aren't thinking about like, oh, why would they even talk to me, or I'm not good enough, or, all of the doubt and, uncertainty. And, it's hard because, as a Black person in our world, we're used to getting the short end of the stick. Like something is always going wrong. Like it's either discrimination or, but you have to let that go. Right. Because whether you realize it or not, it does translate into, your approach and how people perceive you. And there was a time to where I was really uncomfortable asking for it because it's just like, what if they say no? What if they feel like I'm asking for too much? Like all of the stuff that you tell yourself in your head. Like white men don't do that. They say, here's the software. It's $15,000 for the installation. Do you have any questions? And that's it. And if they say no, well, so much for them. Moving on to the next one, right? Like you have to have that same kind of like black and white approach because it's only going to help you get to where you need to be. And the only last thing that I will say is not all good partnerships are good. And be very careful of brands and, just things that you align yourself with and, really spend time thinking about, okay, is this something that, makes sense for me? Does this person really value and appreciate what I'm bringing to the table? Like not all bags are good bags, right? Like you don't want to take money from everybody. You don't want to partner with everybody. And some of those things like you learn through experience, but I think if you're always kind of being strategic and always kind of mentally plotting about how things are shaping up, then you should be fine.
I love that. And before we jump into 2020 shift and then talk about the future, I got one last question in this segment. And I want to talk about, it's been on my mind, and it was on my mind when we actually were at the conference, not the conference, but at the live podcast. It was, you know what goes on in tech, a lot of times, specifically with women, not even women of color, women in general, in tech and the culture. How do you personally, deal with, and I think you were starting to get there, but I want you to just, if you can, just be as candid as possible, how you deal with, working with some of these companies that have crazy, issues and they're like just, it's the culture. And then having the confidence, because you've been in, even though it's only been a couple years with 2020 shift, but you've been around that space for a little while. What would you say for those? Because I know there's women that are listening to this podcast that are in tech or want to be in tech, and they're like, man, like the industry it's just weird. So not only are you in it, but you move in a whole different way. So what do you think mentally and culturally you've done over the years to kind of be stronger in that area?
Yeah, I mean, I think just being aware and knowing what's going on. I will say for me, like I have 5 brothers. I'm the only girl. And I've always kind of been dominant. So, whether we're talking about like student government, circa high school to, being on a panel and I'm the only woman, like I've always kind of been one of the only. So either the only woman, the only Black person, the only female Black person, right? Like, rarely am I surrounded with people that look like me. So I think that has helped me though, right? If anything, is made me more comfortable in those situations. The one thing I will say is that I never conform. I think there's one thing to kind of adapt to situations, which means, you're good in every hood spot.
Yeah.
But conforming means, okay, let me change myself to accommodate people. And that's something I've never done and I never will do. And I think that has been, one of the things that's made me stronger. And has helped me be able to, get through tough situations, especially in tech. So I have, I think everyone's different, but I have a really thick skin. Mm-hmm. And, I'm used to being kind of like male dominated spaces. So working in tech wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm the only woman here and there's a room full of white men. It's just like, okay, water is wet, right? At this point, I know I probably sound a little bit jaded, but that's just kind of how it is. I just accept it for what it is. But I also use that to my advantage, right? Like being one of the only is the best thing that you could ever hope for because you're not everyone else, right? So I can step in a room full of white men and I'm going to shine regardless just because of who I am physically. But then once I actually open my mouth and they're like, oh, wow, and she has a lot of personality and she's really cool and she's really funny, right? Like you kind of put that story together of like who you are. That's taken me so far. I think, a lot of the positions that I've had just throughout my career before, having my business, a lot of the jobs that I worked, I wasn't necessarily qualified for, but I just had moxie, right? Like I kind of had that grit and, that personality that, even if I didn't know what I was doing, I was convincing. People believe that I know what I'm doing. And I hope none of my partners are listening to this. I hope she really do know what she's doing. Like, I do, guys. I promise. But, in the early days, I didn't have any stamps of approval, right? I didn't have the Stanford degree. I didn't, I'm not Greek. Like, I wasn't in any, like, major organizations. Like, I came to New York. I have no network at all, no friends, no nothing. And, everything has just been built from there. But I think it's just, putting myself in a position to where I really used my disadvantages as an advantage. Yeah. And I think that as a woman, that's really what you're going to have to do if you want to survive in the industry. And I think also just, separating different things. Like there was a time to where I felt like I took everything personally. Granted, there are some things that shouldn't be said. And there is such a thing as like sexual harassment, right? Like wrong is wrong, right? But I think in certain situations, we can be a little sensitive or we can read into things a little too much. So I try my best not to do that. And then I'm also, just very forthcoming with boundaries, right? So I remember I joked at the live event, like, don't do meetings with a guy one-on-one after like 5 or 6, but that's real, right? That comes from experience because it's just like, hold on, we're not talking about this or like, what is this, right?
And my man ordered a couple drinks, conversation on shifted, and you're like, hold up, what is, it's kind of like that, the SpongeBob meme where you're just like, what in the world? This is not what I signed up for. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, it can happen, right? So I think you just have to be mindful of that and, set your boundaries and, like I said before, just take whatever you feel is a disadvantage or something that may be holding you back and figure out a way to make it work for you.
Yep. I love that. And, so as we shift to, shift 2020 shift, don't fight me. Don't add me. So I know you briefly talked about kind of what you've talked about the company, but if you could share with our listeners, for ones that may not be aware of kind of what y'all do and all in totality, because y'all doing a lot of stuff, because y'all do a lot of events and whatnot, but you're still a core company. So if you could just share with our listeners how you got started in it and what exactly impact are you making in the tech space?
Yeah, definitely. So, in short, we train people on the skills that they need to find careers that they love in digital media and tech. The way that we do that is primarily through education. So, it's really important for us to make sure that people have a thorough understanding of what these opportunities are and then what it takes to actually be successful, right? Because it's one thing, and we actually do have a newsletter that we send out every week. Highly suggest that you sign up for it. It's bit.ly slash 2020 news with an underscore. You can also just sign up for our newsletter via our website. But, it's one thing for me to say, like, here's 10 marketing roles, apply for them. Cool. But if you don't understand like the basics of SEO and SEM and or like how to put an RFP together, like basic marketing stuff, like you're probably not going to get that far. And I think, what we realize is like there's a ton of job boards and, platforms and different things that are kind of themed like, let's help you get to the next level in your career. But people are missing what the secret sauce is. And you're not going to find out the secret sauce because companies aren't going to tell you, right? Like most job descriptions are very ambiguous.
Yeah, if you want this job, you should do X, Y, and Z.
Like, no, they just expect you to know. But it's just like, if you're not learning it in college and you're not learning it on your own, who's going to teach you? And that's where, we kind of got the idea for 2020. It was like, all right, someone actually needs to like help people understand the tactical and tangible things that they need to do in order to get these types of positions. And then we also have an affinity for hybrid skills. So these are things that require little to no code, because the misconception is that you have to be an engineer to work in tech, and it's awful. I talk to people all the time that, just don't see a space for themselves in the space because they feel like they don't know how to code or they don't have a computer science degree. So I guess I need to go, work in finance. And it's just like, you don't have to do that. There's so many things you can do in tech. You can do whatever the hell you want to do. And, it's easy for me to say because we talk to all of these companies and we know what they're hiring for. But again, they're not on the front lines communicating that to everyone. So it was really important for us to kind of be the matchmaker there for professionals to, these leading startups and brands. So on the company side, like you mentioned before, we work with everyone from, Snapchat to Yelp, and basically help them recruit and find the right people. So companies have partnered with us to do courses. So we had one earlier on in the year with Uber. That was a product design course, which was great. So, people were able to learn the skill, but then with Uber's spin on it, right? So it's not like, let me just learn this thing, but like, let me learn this thing. Let me learn it how Uber would need it. Let me build this thing for Uber. And now I have something I can use in my portfolio. So I can either work for Uber or I can go work for another tech company. And, just thinking of some of the students that have taken our classes that are doing, so well now, people that have come to our events that have gotten hired. Like I was looking at a deck yesterday. There's a woman by the name of Datriana Meeks, and she went to the Office Hack event that we did in the fall. And she's fabulous. She's a UX designer. And, it didn't even hit me until I found out earlier on in the year that Spotify actually hired her as a senior designer.
Wow.
And her picture is in one of our decks. Like I was looking through one of the decks yesterday and I was like, damn, I didn't even realize there's Datriana right there. And, there's so many examples of her. of people that have, once they got plugged, like that was all they needed because they already had the goods, right? Or they had just enough, and then they were able to learn a little bit more, and that put them in the perfect position to kind of get where they wanted to go. So that's kind of how we operate as a business. And then, as you mentioned, also we do have different events that we do. So we did the HBCU tour early in the spring. We're doing the tech crawl again in the Bay. We're doing a conference in partnership with Spotify just for HBCU students. That's going to be in November. It's completely free. Spotify is paying for everyone's travel and accommodations, which is just
huge.
Ridiculous.
Yep.
It's so huge. And yeah, like we're working with Snapchat to do, they want to do like private mixers because we're helping them hire salespeople and creatives. So it's just interesting, right? Like just really getting a behind the scenes look to these companies and figuring out, okay, what is it that you want really, right? And how do we make sure that we're getting you the right people? And how do we make sure that these people are getting hired?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to call out names, but there's a lot of companies to where it's just like, okay, but are people finding jobs though? Right? So it's just like,
and then when they do, are they getting retained?
Yeah, that's another. It's like, do they stay, or is it just?
So what's the secret sauce of that? Like, two questions, and you don't got to divulge too much because I don't want people to copy it. But what's the secret sauce of like of y'all actually preparing? Like, what's the fundamentals of not only getting the job you want, because it's like everybody knows you can get the job you want, but can you keep it?
Secret sauce.
Like, what makes y'all so different than all the other, outside of like what you said as far as with the data? But if you had to say, okay, somebody asked you in their room, all right, cool, we're thinking about working with you, but why should we work with you rather than go to this other company that's similar work? And you looking them right in their eyes right now, what are you gonna say?
Oh man, I mean, because we know what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Like my team it's just great. Like myself, I come from the recruiting side. So it's really easy to sit down with another recruiter because I've done their job, mm-hmm. right? So I can speak to their life. Like I know their pain, I know their challenges because I've done it. My co-founder has been in tech for 7 years, doing multimedia journalism. She was the former tech editor at Black Enterprise. She actually oversaw all of the content for New Me Accelerator, which is one of the first accelerators for Black and Brown founders, right? So it's just like we've been doing the work, right? It's not like we just showed up and was like, oh, diversity in tech is a hot topic, so let's get on it. Like we've been the diversity in tech for years, right? Yeah. So I think it's that, but then we also understand our demo, right? Everyone that is in our demo, 18 to 34, primarily 25 to 34. I'm coming up on my 27th birthday, God willing, end of September. My co-founder is coming up on 29. Like we are our demo. Like the people that we're trying to look out for are our friends. Like we have so many friends that, we are blessed and are already in the industry, but then, we have a lot of friends that aren't, friends that are still working jobs. They don't really want to work. Friends that are confused as to what to do next. Friends that have $90,000 in student loan debt. Oof. Right? Like friends that move back with their parents because they can't afford to pay rent on their own. Like that's who we fight for.
Ooh,
like,
yep. Ooh, that's how you get them right there. I love that. Bring it home. Because it's real. Like it's real out here. Like let's take our political hats off. There's a lot of people that's listening to this podcast got well over $100,000 worth of debt. And it's like, dang, like what? And they jobless or they got a job and it's like you making 60, but dang, like it's 1,500 goes to student loans right there. So. Man, that's huge. So as we begin to kind of get close to the end, as we begin to land this plane, I got my future round, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask a question on, because I got a chance to meet your co-founder as well as talk to a couple of your partners there at the live event. So how have you been able to get such a a strong core group this last year to allow you to guide your events from, like you said, three racks to 50 to hopefully, 6 figures this year, and to grow this company and partner with some of these people? Because I know you need a strong team, but it's not like you have a lot of them. So for the core people that work with you, because there's a lot of people out here that we've had success with our businesses, we have success individually, but we know we are not going to take it to the next level until we really bring some people on. So how are you able to make those relationships happen and know that they were the right people for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Janelle and I, we actually knew each other via Twitter before we finally met in person at a hackathon. And then when I came up with the idea, she was one of the first people I reached out to because I thought she would be good for it. And, Janelle is like my sister now. Like, we spend every day together, Monday through Friday at least. And a lot of the weekends we're together too. Like, we're so tight. And, it's just a blessing because rarely are you able to find Black female founders that are able to work well together. It's a huge pain point. And I wish more women could realize like there's a power in a collective. Like, you don't have to do everything alone. If you and your homegirl got similar ideas, like, get together and do it together. Like, you will go much further than you would solo. And I think as a startup founder, you need a co-founder. I will not lie to you. Unless you have like a team of 15 people ready to rock and roll from day one, it's hard. So I know a few solo founders, and I think most of them are kind of operating as, more of a consultant, or they have like a smaller brand. But, we're trying to build a multi-million-dollar company. Like, that is hard. You start fundraising, dealing with the rejections, dealing with the craziness, dealing with, how do we make this happen in 2 weeks? How do we make sure rent gets paid? Like, you need someone that's going to have your back. So for me, when it came to, having her on the team, like, we were just so aligned. And I think, she really balances me out. Like, I have a lot of crazy in me. And is just very even keel and peaceful. And, there's something that's just so settling about her spirit. And I'm a big vibe. I'm a big vibe person, a big energy person. And, with her, it was just like, I trusted her from the minute we met. And, we've been rocking together since day one. So that's my ace. As far as like our interns, we try to find ones that are really passionate and excited about what we're doing and, see the value in it. We have a freelance team right now that is freaking amazing, and I'm raising money for them. But, they've are all diverse. Like, the guy that's coming on as our CTO is Black. Our product manager is Indian. Our UX designer is Asian. Mm-hmm. We have another developer that's a Black woman. Like, it's one thing to talk about diversity, but like, our team is diverse as hell. And they all have been working in the field for that long. So, either teaching before, have taken other classes. So understand like the boot camp side of the world, from a General Assembly, Galvanize, Startup Institute, whatever. Like, what does education look like? That was really important for us. But most importantly, everyone on the team is also a part of that core demo. So if we're talking about a diverse millennial age 25 to 34, how do we make sure that their needs are met? And how do we make sure that we're developing products and services that are going to serve these people? And I really try to find people that genuinely care about that kind of stuff because, it's like startup life is crazy and it's not always fun. And there's a lot of low moments. And in those moments, the passion that you have for the product is the only thing that carries you through. Right. And I have to make sure that I find people that are just like, I don't care if we don't make money for the next 6 months. I'm going to do this anyway because my heart is in it. Yeah. And I really believe everyone around me is like that. So It's a good feeling.
Yeah, no, that's a great feeling. That's a great feeling right there. And I know throughout this whole podcast, you've been speaking to the course, somebody that's listening that is on the verge of starting this new business, or they're starting it and they're ramping up. So, I thank you for all that. So before we enter my last round, culture change round, I do want to have one question. What's next for 2020 Shift and 2017 and beyond? Like, what's the number one objective for the fourth quarter? And then, what can you disclose to us that we should be looking for in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I would say like the biggest thing for us right now is this platform that we've been developing for like the past 6 months. We've been really stealth about it, so I won't give all the details. But essentially, it's just going to automate a lot of the work that we're doing and make it easier for people everywhere to get access to the skills that we're teaching, access to employers, the companies that are in our network, and also access to coaching from industry professionals that look like them. And I think that's something that's been missing for our community for a while. So that's our main focus. The MVP of that will be ready late fall. So we're really excited to announce it. Like I mentioned before, we do have a few events in the fall. So if you're around, look out for them. In New York, we will have a mixer with Snapchat on October 19th. And then we also have the Spotify conference that is just for HBCU students. The deadline is next week. So if you're an HBCU student and you're listening, you need to get on that ASAP. You can just go to our website, 2020shift.com. And in the navigation bar, there will be a link that says the opening act. Just click there and follow the instructions. So that's November 2nd through the 4th. End of October, October 27th is the tech crawl in San Francisco. And then the other mixer with Snapchat is in November in LA. So I'm still waiting on the exact date, but I believe it's going to be November 7th. So there's definitely stuff happening in different places depending on where you are. And then we will be doing the HBCU Black Business Expo Tour again in the spring of next year. So I'll definitely make sure to follow up with you because I want you in on the tour anyway. But you will definitely have the dates so you can share it out with folks. So yeah, there's a lot going on, but I think the most exciting thing is really just thinking about how we use technology creatively to maximize our impact and just reach as many people as we possibly can.
Love it, bow tied on the knot. So, as we close, I got 5 rapid fire questions, and then our last coach change question. So, you ready?
Yep.
Cool. What is the best piece of advice that you have never received?
Oh. Funny. The best piece of advice that I have never received. So I'm guessing something I've had to learn over time. Yeah. I think really just how much your thoughts shape your reality. Although, I mean, it is advice that I've received in different variations. It's something I never realized until later on in my life how important it really is. And I spent a lot of time kind of manifesting and speaking things into existence. I have a vision board that I make at the top of every year. I've been doing it for like the last 4 or 5 years, and to see things come to life, it's crazy. I spend time every day meditating, writing in my journal, really putting pen to paper on things that I want to see in my life. And, it's a beautiful thing to be able to go back and see how things have come into fruition. So I think, your thoughts shape everything that's happening around you. Was never said to me explicitly, but it's one thing that I know to be very true to this day.
I love that. If you could add one habit and take away one habit, what would they be?
If I gotta add one habit, waking up early. So I'm not a consistent early riser. I have days to where I am, and I'm up and at them at the gym, and I got my breakfast, and I'm sending emails, and it's 9 o'clock, and I'm cooling. But then, there's other days, and I think it's typical of startup life to where we have long days, like our sprint nights. They run until like 8, 9 o'clock. So it's just like, do I really want to be in the office from 8 a.m. until 9 p.m.? And that's kind of why I quit my job anyway. So I wouldn't have to be anywhere I didn't feel like being. But I think if we're talking about habits of, successful people, millionaires, billionaires, everyone that I know for the most part wakes up before 6 a.m. So that's a conscious thing that I'm actively trying to work on. And so check in with me next year to see if I incorporated that good habit.
Next year, let's go next month.
All right, next month.
You about to be on the road, so actually a road, different time zones. That's not the best time to start that.
Not really the best time. We're gonna get it together before 2018.
Yeah. Let's we
can go for that. And then bad habit, man, like saying stupid things. So I actually started this challenge like a month ago, and then I know I haven't been keeping up with it, so I need to start it again. The best book I've read in the past month is How to Be a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. Literally, like, I wish I can send everyone $15 as a gift so they can buy that book. It's so good. And it just changed my perspective on a lot of things. But essentially, like, she goes on to say, obviously, thoughts shape reality. So there's certain things that we say that we don't even realize because it's our subconscious saying these things. But that's why we continue to live in a life of like suckery, right? So things like I can't, things like I hope, things like I want, right? Because as soon as you say you want something, you're basically saying I don't have it. Things like I need, which means you're lacking of it, right? Things like I'm broke. And we all have friends that are like, yo, I'm broke. I can't do this. Yo, I'm broke. Or this is too expensive. Stop saying shit like that because it's always going to be like that as long as you do stuff like that. You say I'm broke, I ain't got it. Chances are 2 weeks from now, you broke and you ain't got it. If you say, oh, I really like that shirt, but it's too expensive, that's telling the universe, okay, this is out of my league. Like, if I see a Chanel bag I really want, I know it's $5,000 and I'm bootstrapping right now so I'm not going to buy it. But as soon as these millions come in, who ain't? I'm getting all the bags I want, right? So instead of saying, I don't have it, I say I'm looking forward to when I do. Right? Like, you have to be very, very conscious. Like, I don't say, like, I want something. I say I desire it or I'm excited, right? Like, little things like that are saying to the universe, like, hey, go on ahead and start to shape things up for me because I'm putting myself in a position to where I deserve all the stuff that I'm saying I need and I want, right? Without actually saying I want, or, when you say I can't, you just stop yourself from doing it. I hope means you're still worried that it's not going to happen. Like, you can't, I forget the exact saying, but it's so true. It's like, you can't have faith and then be doubtful at the same time. Like, the two don't go together, right? So you either really, really believe what you believe or you don't, right? So I think, just breaking that habit of saying things that don't serve you. And I would really suggest that every listener do that for a week and see how much better your life is and just how you feel, right? Because as soon as you say I'm broke, you start thinking about why you're broke and how you always gonna be broke. And coming from someone that used to be very, very broke, right? But like, that doesn't serve you and that's not going to make you happy, right? Like, you have to consciously focus on, self-happiness, self-care, having thoughts that are going to create the life that you want to live.
I love that because every word does matter. I got to catch myself sometimes. I'm like, yo, I can't. How's your day going, man? I can't call it. What do you mean? I can call it. Like, what does that mean? Or like, what are like all these colloquial phrases that we take?
I know.
But you actually answered the next question in that question. So what are your favorite book? And I'm gonna make sure I have all these information and all these links in the show notes. So everybody, when you're listening, make sure you check out the website. Everything's gonna be in the show notes. Last two questions before we go to our last one is, what is your biggest fear?
So I'm learning not to have fear. So I'm reluctant to answer that question. But I think, like, just generally speaking, I really don't like thunderstorms or any kind of, as I'm saying this, like, shout out to Houston, prayers up for Houston.
Yeah.
Growing up in North Carolina, I've been through most hurricanes. So any kind of like natural disaster, stuff like that, to where we really can't control it at all. Those are the things that freak me out and scare me.
Yeah, nah. And last question in this round is, if you were the president of the United States, what is the first thing you would do?
Damn. Thinking of where we sit right now.
Yikes.
I can't think of the first thing I would do. The first thing I would do is thank God that Trump isn't in office anymore.
Oh, man.
But
hey, don't get me kicked off the air, man.
Yeah, I won't. They can track me down for saying it. It's fine. I stand by my opinion.
It's been tracked.
This conversation is being recorded. No, I think the first thing that I would do, honestly, is just figure out something with, I mean, it's hard because health insurance is really important, and I feel like that's going nowhere fast right now. The education, and I think that has everything to do with what we're doing. Like, if there was a way I could just relieve everyone of their student loan debt, I think I would do that. I think it would definitely create an uptick in the economy, which would help other things.
People be balling out of control, man. In fact, what? A coach bad? What? What? It'd be insanity.
Oh, yeah. But I feel like, bringing that kind of financial freedom to people, like, that's just amazing. If I was ever in a position to do that, I would love to do that.
I love that. And so that wraps up the last round. And I call myself the culture change agent, and every single person that I bring on the show is a culture change agent in their own right. And I always try to leave, I wouldn't say on a high note, but on a necessary note, on a thoughtful note, on a heartfelt note. And if you could change one thing about society, most specifically, our African American culture, what would it be and why?
The misconception that there can only be one, or there's not enough to go around. So, i.e., the crabs in the barrel mentality. And granted, I think it's something that, that's a whole other podcast. If we talk about the systematic destruction of the Black community, and kind of like putting us against each other, right? Because you think about when we were segregated and we were all we had, and how powerful the Black community was during that time, and how powerful Black businesses were during that time. You think of like Tulsa, right? The first Black Wall Street. Like, there's so many things. And I feel like that kind of got stripped from us over time, to where it forced us to feel like we have to compete with each other, and that there's not enough room for everyone to make it. But I am here to tell you that there is, there's so much money out there. There's so much. Like, just create your own lane, yo. Like, sometimes I think about that when I listen to music. I'm a big hip hop head, by the way. And anybody that knows me personally knows I know way too many lyrics. But, there's a reason why Hove can coexist against Nas. There's a reason why Kendrick can coexist against Cole. There's a reason why Lil Uzi can coexist against Lil Yachty, right? And I use them specifically because, depending on who you talk to, all of these rappers kind of have something similar, right? So Yachty and Uzi, they're part of the new generation. Cole and Kendrick, like, we rely on them for kind of like that hood gospel, right? Like, I don't want to just hear about Molly and Percocet all day. Like, let me get some
Yeah.
like some substance to this. And then, Hove and Nas, like, iconic, right? But they all have millions of fans. They all have their own money. They all have their own lane, and they all do the same damn thing. And, I feel like too often, even like we choose sides like, oh, Hove is better, or, F. Yachty, or I don't like whoever. Like, I feel like we always are so quick to just tear down and forget about like, hey, if they can make a lane, I can make one too. Even if I'm doing the exact same thing as them. Like, it's not swagger jacking. It's not any of that stuff. It's just finding what you're passionate about and doing it uniquely. And I definitely say that for anyone that's working in tech, because you're going to have 20 competitors. Every startup has at least 5 to 10 direct competitors, right? But do you think these white guys sit around thinking about, oh, I'm not going to start, the founders of Lyft didn't say, I'm not going to do Lyft because there's already Uber. And then you think about Via, and then you think about Juno, and then you think about Skirt and all of these other car services. Why? Because everyone has a lane. I got Lyft and Uber on my phone.
Yep.
Hey, like, you can get the money. Like, stop thinking that you can't.
I love that. You ended on a phenomenal note. This was a thorough, meticulous, like, we had it in like an hour and 10, like, and I just used a made up word. So I'm pumped up. So I'm going to keep it going. It's like a rapper, this freestyle. He just said a rhyme that didn't make no sense, but he just keep flowing with the cadence, and he got the energy, and everybody's rocking. Everybody's like, yeah. But real talk, phenomenal interview. And before we go, I think you mentioned online, but once again, tell us where we can find all the information about what you do, where you're at online, where everybody can find 2020 Shift.
Yes. So if you want to look for 2020 Shift, it's just 2020 Shift on everything. So 2020shift.com, 2020 Shift on Facebook, 2020 Shift on Instagram, LinkedIn, and anything else you can imagine. And if you're looking for me personally, it's at wAriel Lopez on Twitter, and wAriel Lopez XO on Instagram, wAriel Lopez on LinkedIn.
Love it. And make sure, guys, for my pick your brain folk, like she said, find challenges before you find brains to pick. To do not email her, how do I get in the tech? She just gave you the blueprint. Find a challenge, find something. Do not send me no message. Can't connect me to wAriel Lopez. Do not. I'm telling you, do not do it. Cause I'm like, seriously, people are this is what's gonna happen. I'm post it. Everybody's gonna hit my inbox. Hey, gee, can you connect with her? Or how do I get into the tech? Dog, we just talked about it in an interview, bro. Like, find a challenge first. Find her challenges. Look online. See something you can improve. Then reach out. Don't say, can you pick your brain? She just gave an hour of freaking content to you, but I'm off that. Everybody, thank y'all for listening. And, as we always do, I need you two things and two things only. And you're saying, like, what is that, Miss Steele? You're gonna ask me to do so much. No, I asked enough. What is that? Change the freaking culture. Good night.